It's going to be really interesting seeing what happens over the next couple of years as Elden Ring falls off and becomes irrelevant and FromSoftware has to move on to the next thing. Because I think in a lot of ways, Elden Ring is this generation's The Last of Us, right? A game that was worshipped by game journalists, worshipped by its audience, was put on this impossible pedestal that it really will not be able to live up to. Like, I've kind of already talked to this already, but Elden Ring is a clear step down from the Dark Souls games. It's a lot more casualized. It strips away the level design. There's a lot of things like wrong with Elden Ring, and it doesn't make any notable improvements. It's just the same thing again, but worse. And this is something that anyone who's stuck with the series for any length of time would be able to tell you. But the secondaries who came on for Elden Ring simply because it was the new hype thing to do, and because like George R. R. Martin was involved allegedly, uh, these people are not going to stick around long term. I think that is very apparent with the way these people act and how they conduct themselves is that they are obsessed with the idea of Elden Ring, this idea that it's some deep, dark, like action RPG franchise, and not necessarily what the game actually is that it's a very mediocre, very inspired open world game, right? It's not very good, it's not very well put together, it's not very well thought out, right? There are a lot of things wrong with Elden Ring, and yet you don't really see a lot of people talk about it, but they are starting to slip through the cracks, right? You know, back when this game first came out, like you couldn't speak anything badly about this game at all. Like people would just say like, "Oh, filtered." Like even now in this in the comment section of this video, you have people going, "Filtered." Like you just couldn't beat the game, which is why you don't like it. Like at the time, people took that very seriously, but the thing I'm starting to see now on in normie circles is that people are beginning to reject the notion that Dark Souls is hard, and that's why that they don't enjoy the game, right? Because if you're talking to someone like me who plays stuff like Gradius 3 and like the original Punch Out and can beat Ninja Gaiden, right? If you're talking to someone like me and trying to convince me that I got filtered by the difficulty, like I'm just gonna laugh in your face, right? Because I've played and beaten way harder games than Elden Ring, right? Elden Ring is not all that difficult. If you're struggling, you just have to grind a lot, level up your character, get better equipment, like figure out strats. Like it's not that difficult, really. But the audience desperately wants to create the illusion that the game is hard, and that's the appeal, right? And that if you don't get into it, you're just a pleb who doesn't understand these games. But I do understand the games. You know, I do understand your mindset. I do understand your elitism, and I don't respect it. And what's more, I am not alone, right? Like I've said this before, but I have been floored by the sheer amount of positive reception my videos on Elden Ring have gotten in certain circles, right? I have gotten a lot of support from people who feel the way I do in regards to this property, that the game is boring, that it is poorly put together, that the enemies aren't interesting, that the lore isn't well told, right? That the visuals are terrible, the combat is awful. Like anybody who seriously knows anything about video games will tell you that like Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom are just so much better put together games, you know, with better combat systems, better mechanics, better like exploration, better things to find, more things to do, right? More variety in gameplay, right? Zelda is a better game than Elden Ring, and yet we're in this position right now where there is this very strong refusal to acknowledge that among certain groups of people, right? Elden Ring fans don't like acknowledging that Elden Ring has any flaws at all. Like, if you have any flaws with Elden Ring, like, it means you are the problem. The player is the problem. Get good is their mindset. Like this attitude, I think, is going to drive away new players, people who aren't interested in the game, and more people are going to start seeing through what the community is trying to do. More and more people are going to start like mocking the Elden Ring community, start mocking FromSlop. And it's remarkable to me, being a Paper Mario fan. I spent like over 20 years being told that like, oh, the Thousand Year Door is the greatest thing ever. It's the greatest Mario spin-off ever. It's one of my favorite games of all time. That. Like so many people came out and did this. Arlo built his entire YouTube channel around the premise that like new Paper Mario was bad and that the old style was better, specifically the Thousand Year Door. And what happens? The Thousand Year Door gets remade. It sells reasonably well, but it wasn't the big gangbuster that people thought it would be, right? It did not outsell Origami King at all. It did not even come close, which shocked a lot of people other than me. So like Arlo released a bunch of videos coping about it, right? He still is coping about it and his audience, and a lot of people came out and celebrated that these people took a massive L because what they were doing, being Paper Mario elitists was off-putting to a lot of people. Anybody who enjoyed Super Paper Mario or Sticker Star or Color Splash or Origami King or even something like Paper Jam or the Mario and Luigi games, right? These people know that these idiots were wanted to hold back the growth of Mario RPGs by insisting that like Mario RPGs have to be a certain way and that they can't innovate and they can't experiment with different gameplay styles or do anything different. Like it got really bad around the 2015 period. Like I remember when Mario and Luigi Paper Jam came out and people were like freaking out about it. Like, no, it's been sticker starified. And then like Alpha Dream went bankrupt a couple of years later, and I saw these people celebrating, like, oh, Mario and Luigi is dead. Now we can get our classic Paper Mario back. Like, what? Like, really? You're going to disrespect Paper Mario, Mario and Luigi. You're going to disrespect the developers in order to prop up a game that doesn't even get made anymore, right? Like, are you serious? Like, it's insane. Like, it was like positively insane to see just how many people were like lashing out at Nintendo over like the Mario mandate and the narrative like in regards to that. Like it was positively insane. And eventually that community collapsed, right? When Nintendo actually did remake the Thousand Year Door, right? Uh like what exactly more do they have to complain about, right? Like the Mario mandate theory is dead, the Thousand Year Door is available now, and their entire movement kind of lost all of its momentum, essentially, like practically overnight. And it feels that way. It really does, but like it was a long, gradual process over the past 20 years, right? It took 20 years for people to get over the Thousand Year Door and the Paper Mario fan base and start like turning on them and making fun of them for being ridiculous. The same thing is going to happen to FromSlop, right? Like it's going to be the same kind of thing where people start noticing the stereotypes, they start making fun of the stereotypes, they start noticing that like these people will aggressively attack anything that isn't FromSlop, even other software productions, right? I saw like Elden Ring fans attacking Armored Core 6 under the assumption that it was like taking time and resources away from the Elden Ring DLC. Like I've seen people complain that they were producing Armored Core 6 instead of producing a new Elden Ring game. And that really just goes into their mindset where they really cannot appreciate things other than Elden Ring at all. And it's going to create this weird insular community that just becomes increasingly incestuous and just will start tearing itself apart because of how ridiculous it is, right? We're in the early stages of that now, but I think in another 10 years, like it's going to be remarkable that anybody even was hyped about Elden Ring at all, right? To me, it's very obvious that for Elden Ring, this is the beginning of the end.